there's a whole bunch of people that own like one property. And part of that was because so many people got their first property in like 2008 or 9. That's
Yeah.
when real estate tanked. In fact, I was a real estate investor after 2008 because my age group and older, we were buying like our first house in like 2007 and the
Yeah.
real estate market tanked. And so
Yes.
you got a ton of people, like say you bought a house in Florida, real estate cut in half, and then you're like, I can't get rid of this thing. It's lost half its value.
Exactly.
And so they became overnight, real estate investors and they have one property. That's not the ideal way to get into real estate. There's no intention behind that. It's kind of just like a solution to the problem that you're in. And typically those types, including myself, didn't have like a ton of like knowledge yet around how to do it. But I've noticed even still today, there's a whole bunch of people that just have like either have owned one or maybe two at the most properties, and they have a hard time getting over that hump. But I think a lot of it has to do with just not getting these baseline things that we're talking about
Yeah,
covered, like not
exactly.
doing the numbers, the basics, or not educating themselves, not having a team of people around them.
I think that's the most important thing, Daniel. I like to call them accidental landlords because either it's because they purchased a home and moved out of it and they started renting one, or they're someone who saw home prices appreciating so quickly between '04 and '05, and then they did it for appreciation, but they purchased properties that weren't cash flowing day one. And so a big part of what you want to do is find something that's cash flowing day one, because here's the thing, property prices tanked after '08, '09, but let's look at what happened to rents nationally, right? Historic numbers for rents in that period. '08 rents dropped by 4% nationally. '09 they dropped by another 5%, and then they started shooting back up. So if you had a cash flowing property where you had that 10% buffer built in, that's why we stress test properties. That's why we use calculators. That's why we have those resources available for free. But if you've done that and you've stress tested your properties and you have that 10% buffer, you would not have had to feed that property from day one. It would have just sat there, rents went up. And then here's the interesting thing about inflation hedge, right? Your rents are going up, but your mortgage payment is fixed at that level, whatever you got it at. And so over time, your cash flow is increasing. So if you got something at '08 before the crash and that property was cash flowing and you were able to hold it with a 30-year mortgage, you would be doing phenomenally well today, right? And then the problem is people didn't have cash flowing assets because they were banking on appreciation. And that's a mistake you don't want to make. I know a physician who bought 64 units, these apartment buildings in '07 and '08, but he got the right kind of debt on them. Now, again, commercial loans, that's a whole another beast, but he had the
Yeah.
right kind, he had seller financing, so he could just hold it, right? And he did phenomenally well, even though prices tanked, because he had the right debt on it, which you don't have to worry on it if you have conventional mortgages with the single family home.
Mhm.
And he had a property that was cash flowing, right?
Right.
So that's the only thing. And then you have inflation help you, and then time help you.
And long term, like, a lot of these direct ownership, like long term rentals, for instance, you should ideally view it as a long term thing. So, like, you should be prepared for the market to tank
Yes,
unexpectedly. You never know. And that should be like kind of just a thing that happens, that's just a blip on the radar. But like, it doesn't matter that much 20 years from now. You're still going to do the thing, and it's just going to, and if you're doing it for cash flow reasons too, like you said, like that typically doesn't have as massive of an effect, or it should already have been built into the equation that it should be a
exactly.
non-issue.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think historically home prices go up by 3 to 4%, and that's just inflation matched.
Mm,
And if you factor that drop in and you still see where we are, we're actually home prices are increasing above that inflation baseline, right? And
yeah,
so
lately.
yeah, as long as you have a long-term strategy, as long as you're buying in the right markets, and so every real estate is very hyper local, every market performs well. This is where market due diligence comes into play, right? If you're buying something in a landlord friendly state where there's tons of population growth, industry diversification, where people are migrating and their incomes are going up, then you're safe, right? Because then you have the ability to
Market.
exit that deal.